We open with breaking news this morning, Friday, June the 26th, the year of our Lord 2020. At least 3 people are believed to have been killed in an incident in Glasgow city centre, Scotland. A male suspect shot by an armed police officer. A male police officer is believed to be one of those who has been injured. It appears to be that about 20 people have been stabbed. We're going to bring you more details on that as we get it. This follows the incident in Reading in the United Kingdom last weekend, where a Libyan asylum seeker was arrested by police after having stabbed 3 people after a Black Lives Matter rally just outside of London. Welcome to the War Room. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, and our special in-studio guest today, Ryan Girdusky. The camera's
Thank
there.
you for having me.
Yeah,
thank you.
Ryan, I'm going to hold up the book for your...
My new book, They're Not Listening, How the Elites Created the National Populist Revolution, available Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, Books A Million, wherever books are sold.
We want to start today by talking about what took place in D.C. last night. Remember, we talked on the show yesterday about these protesters going to the Lincoln statue in Lincoln Park, on the outskirts of Capitol Hill. And I want to get some of the footage up from last night so that you guys can see exactly what went down there. The erection of a big fence, a lot of police guarding it yesterday, and also the protesters walking around the residential neighborhoods again on Capitol Hill, even entering some restaurants in Washington, D.C. last night, and demanding that people in the restaurants put their hands up if they believe Black Lives Matter. And my question is, what would happen if you're a patron in that restaurant and you don't want to put your hand up because you know Black Lives Matter's founders have called themselves trained Marxists? You know about the background of the Thousand Currents group behind Black Lives Matter. Maybe you know about the Socialist Worker Party in the United Kingdom sponsoring Black Lives Matter. And last night also I want to draw attention to this, as you're seeing in the pictures in front of you. People walking down the street not just chanting Black Lives Matter, but also chanting Trans Lives Matter and Other Lives Matter. But remember, we're not allowed to say all lives matter. You're certainly not allowed to say white lives matter. You can't fly that above a football ground in the United Kingdom, as was done last weekend, without drawing the ire of basically everyone in the British political establishment, including the so-called Conservative Party. But trans lives matter is fine. The usurpation now of BLM, or TLM, and whatever else they fancy putting in front of it, that's fine. But all lives don't matter. Only the lives matter that they tell you. To the point where, and Jack, jump in here, to the point where a Cambridge University professor tweets white lives don't matter. And what happens to her, Jack?
She actually gets rewarded with tenure. This is the world we're living in, people. This is the 1968 Cultural Revolution brought to the American shores. Look back at the Khmer Rouge, year 0, 1976. Chaos is the purpose. They are trying to divide us. They are trying at every corner to try and undermine our history, undermine our institutions, destroy our heroes, so that we have nothing to fall back on, so that we have no moral capacity to provide us strengths in the coming days. This needs to stop. All Americans who are of good conscience, which is the vast majority of Americans, has to step forward. I will make one comment about your whole thing about Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, all this stuff. I was talking to a black friend of mine the other day, and I was kind of ribbing him a little bit, and I said, you know, we all understand this thing about police brutality and stuff we're talking about, but both of us were kind of acknowledging that things are getting out of control. And I said, hey, man, when did a bunch of, white chicks and skinny white dudes take over your thing? Apparently, Pew just did a study. Only 17% of the people participating in these marches are black Americans. They're mostly skinny, chicken-chested white dudes and then suspicious women of, who knows what attraction. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Man up, peeps.
I don't
Ryan.
think. I think that you're. I think that you're might be a little behind the eight ball. I don't think this is the march through the institutions. I think this is the complete surrender of the institutions. And I think that, we're past the point of the '68. This is French Revolution time right here. I mean, we are. This is the age of reason we're walking through, and this is a new age of reason, and they are fully committed. I mean, we are so far gone that the left has taken over the institutions of business, of education, of many police organizations, of the military in certain capacities. This is the new age of reason. This is the re-education camp period. This is the phase in the French Revolution before the guillotines. This is not. We are way far gone from what is. But I will say something about All Lives Matter and the difference of activists from the rest of the public. There was a YouGov Economist poll that found that 60% of Americans said All Lives Matter is a positive term that they agree with. And it was, I think, 70% for Black Lives Matter. The difference is the 10% of vocal activists. So most Americans haven't signed on board to the political cause of Black Lives Matter. They like the positive message. Because, Americans are just looking for anything to unify them. That doesn't mean that they're going to sit there and claim to defund the police.
On that point, about unification and about positive messaging, the Wall Street Journal was pretty scathing over the last 24 hours about the President of the United States in both the editorial and an op-ed by Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal. Now, these people haven't been the greatest fans of President Trump, to say the least.
Or soothsayers into the future.
That's also correct. Yeah. But tell us, Ryan, in your estimation, we've gone through that this morning. Is there any truth in what they're saying? There are some alarm bells ringing amongst the campaign staff. What is going on?
Yeah, Trump's in trouble. There's no. If I was on the Trump campaign, you have 4 months to do a complete new shakedown, and the problem is there's no coherent message about what President Trump will bring you in a second term. There's no coherent message on what President Trump has done the first term. Besides talking about the First Step Act 55,000 times that no one cares about. You're talking about what black unemployment rate used to be, no one cares about. I think that he's in serious trouble. He is down, according to the New York Times poll, which is a very good polling company, so I'm not dismissing them. I think that they're overhyped the Democrat sample size a little bit, but that's besides the point. But their numbers, he's down 15 points with college-educated white Americans and 10% with 10% with non-college educated white Americans. You know who he's not down with in this entire coronavirus pandemic, racial epidemic? He's up with black and Hispanic voters. Because they don't care about any of this. They don't care about any of this at all. This is a white liberal thing from people who read the Atlantic magazine and hate you and will always hate you. They do not care. Average working people do not care about anything that's going on right now in America when it comes to taking down a statue to make them feel better about themselves. And like you said with the Pew study, 17%, I didn't see the Pew study, but if that's true, makes complete sense. Did you see that girl covered in Lululemon who's screaming at a black police officer? She's a white girl. You're part of the problem. You're a racist. These people have lost their minds. If we were producing animal shelters that created as many mentally deficient creatures as our universities are, we would shut them down in a heartbeat.
Let me ask you this question.
Well said.
That's a Ryan rant from this original. Let me ask you this question. You say that this is mainly a white liberal thing and they've lost their minds. You don't see this as calculated? You think this is like some general expression of mental illness going on the left?
This is the Me Too movement of race.
Right.
This is the Me Too movement. You have a
But
lot.
is this timed? Is it timed? Or has this just come about naturally?
I think that there's a general anger towards George Floyd's murder. I mean, it was really brutal. I mean, sitting there screaming for his mother is horrible. But at the same exact, and I think that, Americans of all races were genuinely outraged. However, what they are moving to now, what they are doing now, has nothing to do with Black America. This is regime change, and you should look at it as regime change. We could sit there and talk about, and I talked about this. I tweeted about this earlier the other day. when you talk about the police are one of the few institutions, if you do not have a bachelor's degree, you can't afford to go to college, the police and the military are two avenues to get out of poverty. Most major cities, majority of police officers are non-white. My dad was a cop, oldest of 11 kids, no college degree. That was his solution in getting out of poverty. To defund the police is to cut hundreds of thousands of Americans off from any avenue of reaching the middle class, reaching the lower working class. And it is a public sector union of working class, mostly non-white Americans. This is who the left pretends to champion. And this is really who the right, I mean, if right could seize on a voting block, this is the voting block to seize on, because the left's sitting there and saying, no, we're going to take everything away from you.
One of the things that I just find horrifying, and I'm just going to state it right now, you've got 68% of the American people believe that policing is one of the most important jobs in America. So, per usual, we are watching this fringe element set fires around our country. We have been led to believe that there is a racist hiding behind every door. This is not true. But as we see in the streets, there are certainly a lot of these spoiled, tatted up losers who are out there trying to turn this country into a music festival on the fourth day, filled with trash, mud, and their dirty bodies. This is not the way this country is going forward. We're going to see a video a little bit later, and I'm not propping myself because I'm no different than all the other American men there too. It's time for American men and women to stand up and say enough. If we are out on the street standing up for what we stand up as human beings, as Americans, what we do every day, then this thing ends immediately. These people are cowards. That's why they wear masks. They're throwing bombs. So as far as I'm concerned, they're terrorists. Mr. President, if you are listening, why don't you get your boy Christopher Wray out there and tell us what he's going to do about these domestic terrorists? And if he doesn't have an answer adequate to the United States citizens, fire him. Why don't you hire somebody who is unimpeachable on the question of race? How about some badass like Dan Bongino to go in there and clean it up and break some heads, Mr. President?
I want to get Greg in on this.
And Ryan, that's a great point of elevating people in communities up to family-sustaining jobs. But the demonization of the police, which is a honorable profession, law enforcement in general, not just police, but we've got Capitol Hill here, Capitol Hill Police, Secret Service, the military. The demonization of honorable family-sustaining jobs is terrible to say.
No, that's exactly right. But I will say this: people. If you look at the Monmouth poll from a few months ago, people look at police like they look at Congress. They hate the idea of police, but they actually like their local police because everyone knows a cop. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone knows somebody in law enforcement of some capacity. Every family does. It's a cousin, it's uncle, it's a neighbor. So there's only so much demonization that's really actually going on right now, and I think essentially. But this is the destruction of one of the few ways to get people out of poverty in America and most inner cities in America, and it's something that the left used to champion. And the right could take these voters in a heartbeat if they tried it.
Okay, when we come back, we have some exclusive footage to show you from yesterday in downtown Washington, D.C., filmed by yours truly, and you might see somebody else from the War Room in that footage as well. We'll walk you through what took place yesterday on Connecticut Avenue in the middle of the afternoon. Just happened to be in front of us, so we managed to capture it on film. Stick around for that. We also have Curtis Ellis joining us on the show, long-standing friend of the show. Andy Surabian, who has a great op-ed about tech bias over at the National Pulse, which you may have heard of before as well. I want to thank our production partners as well. We'll bring you more breaking news out of Glasgow as we get it. America's Voice, Newsmax TV, the John Fredericks Radio Network, G News, and GTV. Stick around for more War Room Pandemic. Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Ryan Girdusky, Jack Posobiec will be joining us in the next hour as well. An action-packed show. We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. 2020 has been a gut punch to American business, and if you're going to succeed, you need every possible advantage. Smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. Get your free guide right now at netsuite.com/Bannon. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, and Ryan Girdusky here in studio. We're joined by Jack Posobiec in the next hour, Curtis Ellis, Andy Surabian. We've got a packed out show for you today. We want to get into where this is going wrong, why there are still people, rioters out on the streets, why there are still statues under threat, why there are people now going into restaurants and demanding fealty to the Black Lives Matter cause, to the Trans Lives Matter cause, whatever the latest slogan is. They've got this now FTP thing that stands for all sorts of different obscenities that they're chanting out there on the streets. Here on Capitol Hill and downtown in Washington, D.C., your nation's capital, I want to play the clip that I filmed yesterday outside 3 blocks north of the White House on Connecticut Avenue. Let's roll the clip so people can see in the background exactly what's taking place, and we will narrate this for you because of expletives. We don't want to play the audio. There goes Jack Maxey. Jack Maxey walking into the road as you see the man in the blue shirt. As we walked out of a building after a lunch meeting, man in a blue shirt accosting the small police woman you see in the front of your shop there. We have more footage of this, and we're going to be putting up at the National Pulse later today as well. And what happens is the people around seem to have identified that this man has a knife either tucked into his belt or into his pocket, and he was shouting at the policewoman, "Shoot it, shoot it, shoot me." That went on for a couple of minutes. She was there by herself. And then you see finally backup arrives. Now the man charges up to the police car, right up to the window, and you saw the way that the policeman opened that door to push the guy back. The onlookers at this point are shouting, "He has a knife, he has a knife," at which point this brave police officer decides, "I don't want to be the guy to find out if he's got a knife. Let's take him down." But this is in the nation's capital, 3 blocks north of the White House. You have a singular, sole, 5'1" female police officer, gun drawn on a guy charging her supposedly with a knife. And the brave Jack Maxey going in there to offer some assistance. Jack?
Well, let me talk about this because it's quite sad. This poor guy was having a mental breakdown. He had his shopping cart knocked over. It was obviously, he was at the end of his tether. He was mentally disturbed, clearly. And it's one of these situations where I have no criticism of the police officer. In fact, if she had shot him and I was a witness in a grand jury, I would have supported her, right? The guy was armed. He was charging her. But it's one of these situations that we've created for ourselves out of a nation, out of this pretend notion of reality. How in God's name is a 5'4" woman, no matter how wonderful she is, out there on the street alone? Because she has no way to diffuse the situation when there's a 170-pound man going crazy other than to pull out her gun. So myself and 2 other guys, sort of out of a natural reaction, just sort of walked out calmly, put ourselves between the police officer with her drawn gun and this guy. And the 2 other Americans, or actually one guy I think was Caribbean or Nigerian, and we were talking about it afterwards, and all we could think of was, man, this is the last thing that this country needs, is to see another black guy get shot in the street. And everybody who was there, I think, had a lot of empathy for the situation because the guy was so clearly in distress, right? He wasn't thinking rationally. And just think how sad it is. Think of the despair that must come over a man for him to beg for you to kill him, right? This is what has happened inside this country. And think about where this despair comes from. This despair comes because people lack hope, they lack jobs, they're addicted to opiates, they have been suffering this COVID-19. And let's think about it. Let's go back through the math. What happened to those jobs? The elites shipped them to China for dirty lucre. Okay? Let's just be straight up about it. And then let's look at the addiction to drugs and opiates and things like that. The elites want to keep our southern border over. Half the people dying of opiates in this country are dying with fentanyl in their system. That comes from state-owned Chinese chemical companies who manufacture this killing drug and use the Mexican cartels to bring it in here. Again, why? To undermine our institutions, to undermine our society, to undermine our faith in this beautiful, great country, this place that we love, right? Some of these people go out there, burn flags, knock down statues. You know what's going on in my mind the whole time? I'm in tears. I'm in tears. Go look up in the thing. Everybody out there listening, maybe I'll read it in the show later. The very first Congressional Medal of Honor won by an African American, what was it won for? This guy was wounded 4 times, and he continued to pick up the regimental flag. Okay? This is what America's about. America's not about some punk taking that flag that represents the courage of every single one of us and burning it. That's not America. It's time for us all to stand up and say enough. This is like the kids' party in the basement has gone on too long. Time for mom and dad to come down, turn on the lights, and start kicking kids out the back door.
Ryan, a lot of what Jack is talking about here is precisely what you identify in the book, right? They're not listening how the elites created the nationalist populist revolution. You get into, in the book, what he's talking about. Shipping the jobs overseas for filthy lucre.
Yeah. That's an important part. But I think the most important part when it comes to the book right now, when I was on Tucker Carlson's show last week, he said this has happened all of a sudden, and it really hasn't. And I display this in images and graphs with the book. But and they're not listening how the elites created the national populist revolution. But
we've got it up on the screen now.
Oh, okay. If you look at the percentage of woke terminology in our general conversation produced by the media around 2009, 2010, it exploded 700-800%. Conversations about whiteness, about institutional racism, about systematic racism, all these things that were coming out of the media. And at the same time, you were seeing the black incarceration rate dip by 30% over 30 years. You're seeing the wage gap between black and white Americans, the education gap between black and white Americans, the number of unarmed black Americans being killed by cops down 80% in 5 years. All of the trends that you would want to see for one of the working class segments of society were going in the right direction. The narrative, though, was going in the other direction. And so, but perception is reality. People perceive a racist country because they're being told often enough this is a racist country when the data doesn't match. And data is not enough. Perception is everything. But we need to sit there and smack against the notion. And actually, Yale produced a study in 2016 that I just read recently, and they were just like, there's no systematic racism. And you could tell they were liberal writers, and they were devastated by the fact that they could not find systematic. They were so upset by it. But it's not a matter of Black Lives Matter. It's about working class dignity matters. Working class Americans' dignity matters. And when it comes to infrastructure and it comes to jobs and manufacturing, everything that we just said.
This goes right to the heart of what we talk about with economic nationalism. Economic nationalism has nothing to do with your race, your gender, your sexual attraction, any of these things. What economic nationalism has is acknowledging that every single American citizen is a shareholder in this amazing country, okay? So we want this tide to lift every single boat in the country, and Donald Trump is doing his best to get there. I think that one of the things that we have to look at while we're talking about this, Donald Trump is one man, okay? He is one man, and he is Horatius at the gate right now, right? Then out spake brave Horatius, captain of the gate, to every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late, and how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods? Come on, people, we got to back him up. He's at the gate. Yeah, the mob is coming through, and we need to back him up.
You could back him up, but unless you're answering a poll question, unless they call your house, here's the problem: is the mob is violent, and violence is creates fear by elected officials. And
here's the solution: America is violent. But the problem is, most of us don't use that violent unless we have to. But I will tell you, if they want to start a fight, they are going to get a fight.
I think it's utter nonsense. I think it's utter nonsense.
Listen, it is not true. Where's
the fight
country.
back? Where's the fight back? You're men and you're getting bullied around by chicken-chested kids marching up and down Connecticut Avenue, telling you that you have to put your hand up and say Black Lives Matter.
I agree.
Where's your fight back?
This is why I'm trying.
They're calling your bluff, and they're winning.
Hey, you know what? They're calling your bluff, and like I always say, courage is infectious, so is cowardice. People need to start showing courage.
Aside from Italians in Philadelphia protecting the Columbus statue, there's not been any sit there and push back, and especially because most Americans, conservatives, they're not violent people. They're just not. They're sitting by as 10% of an angry mob, 10% of the country represents the angry mob, regime change mentality. Take it over. The American Revolution, not everyone was on board. It was 15% of the country that was on board, and it changed the entire world. You don't need that many people.
So if we get 15% of the real men on board, then this thing changes,
yeah,
right?
Maybe. Let's see them.
Where are you guys?
Exactly. No, I have the same exact question, Jack. It's something I think about every day. Especially, hang on. Just growing up watching America from the outside in, all we saw was pictures of the things that you're depicting in what you're saying, right? Big men, big guns, defending the flag, playing with pigskins, and the Dukes of Hazzard, right? That's the view of America we had from the outside in. And I'm not seeing that anywhere right now. What I'm seeing is Antifa. What I'm seeing is these black bloc people, kids, scrawling on buildings, and nobody's stopping them. Jack, you walked out, people saw in that video, you walked out into the street yesterday to help that policewoman. How many other people are doing that?
Hey, you want to know what happened? 2 other men were there.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And how many people walked past?
Yeah, and there were a lot of people who weren't doing anything.
Right.
But you know what? Sometimes all it takes is one man to speak the truth. This is what is happening
You're down
in this country.
from 15% now to one man. Listen, we have to go to a break, but when we come back, we'll get into more of this. Curtis Ellis will be joining us as well. Make sure you guys get the book, They're Not Listening. Ryan actually pointed me to page 57, which has had some really interesting data about the New York Times, the proliferation of the social justice stuff that you're seeing and how disproportionate it is. We'll be right back. Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Ryan Girdusky, Curtis Ellis, and more screaming matches here on War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Stephen K. Bannon is on assignment. You're back in the War Room Friday, June the 26th, year of our Lord 2020. Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Ryan Girdusky, Curtis Ellis, and Jack Posobiec in the building as well. Jack joining us in the second hour here. 2020 has been a gut punch to American business, and if you're going to succeed, you need every possible advantage. We're pleased to have NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system, as a sponsor of the show. Smart companies run on NetSuite because NetSuite gives you the visibility and control over all your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Everything you need all in one place. So whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in sales, NetSuite lets you manage every penny with precision. Join over 20,000 companies who run NetSuite to make it happen for them. NetSuite also surveyed businesses in the United States and assembled a playbook of the top strategies that they're using to come back after this coronavirus pandemic. Get your free guide at 7 actions businesses need to take now. And you can schedule a free product tour for yourself at netsuite.com/Bannon. A free guide, free product tour, netsuite.com/Bannon. I want to welcome now to the show Curtis Ellis. Curtis Ellis, long friend of the show, long friend of mine, policy director at America First Policies. Curtis, thanks for joining us here this morning.
It's nice to be here.
Curtis, the one law already on the books that will protect American workers and bring supply chains back today. In the first 2 segments of this show, we've talked about the dignity of the American worker. We've talked about the establishment selling out the American worker, as Jack Maxey put it, for the dirty lucre. You're saying, in an article I believe that's going to be running on WND this evening and all weekend, that there's a law already on the books that will help protect American workers and bring back those supply chains. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, the Trade Act of 1930. This has what the Democrats have always been calling for in trade agreements, clear, enforceable labor standards. Well, the Trade Act of 1930 has a very clear and very enforceable labor standard. It prohibits the importation of goods made with slave labor or child labor. Just flat out, you cannot bring in and sell goods in America made with slave labor, forced labor, child labor. And The really good news is, to its credit, the Obama administration gave teeth to this act. It eliminated some loopholes. And furthermore, we have in place already the means to enforce this. Customs and Border Protection can seize goods or turn away goods at the border if they have a reasonable suspicion that these are made with forced labor. Even the smallest amount of forced labor. If you have a button on a shirt that was made by slaves or children, Customs and Border Protection can turn that away. And the other good news is we have people over at the International Labor Affairs Bureau, ILAB, at the Department of Labor, where I worked, that are investigating all this. We have a good idea of where the slave markets are, what is being made with slave labor. And in fact, Customs and Border Protection has already turned back some of these goods. They've used their power against the Chinese garment manufacturers and against a Malaysian manufacturer of disposable rubber gloves. They've issued 11 of these turnback orders. They're called withhold orders. And but there's a lot more that can be done, because we know, thanks to an Australian research project, that there are 83 name brand companies, global brands like BMW, The Gap, Apple, General Motors, that suppliers to these companies are using slave labor from Western China. The Xinjiang, the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province, the Uyghur Muslims have been interned in concentration camps, and the government, the Chinese Communist government, lends this labor out, or actually impresses them, forces them to work in factories that are used in the export industries. So right now, today, without passing a single law, without hiring a single person or adopting a new bureau or agency, our government has the means to turn back goods at the border that are made with this slave labor. This would be an incredible blow to the global supply chains that have destroyed American labor, destroyed the standards, destroyed everything we fought for. We fought a civil war to end slavery in this country, and then my ancestors have fought and shed blood to build labor standards, decent working conditions, decent pay in this country. It's all being destroyed by these slave markets overseas, where now goods are coming into the country made with slave labor, which, as we said at the top, is against the law, a law already on the books.
Curtis, you walk through this very clearly in the op-ed, and I can't wait to be able to share it with our audience when it goes up on WND. But my question for you is this: the implications for the products that we all have in front of us are quite massive. So what would be the impetus, what would be the driving factor in doing this, apart from, as we know, the political establishment not really interested in bringing American jobs back? That has been something that has been quite unique to this administration. However much it has succeeded or not is a different matter. But from the administration's perspective, yes, they want to do this, but at what cost? Like you say, if there's Apple, BMW, Gap, Nike, Sony, Volkswagen, are we just going to stop seeing those products appear? And what implications does that have?
No, we would not stop seeing them appear. They would be manufactured in the United States. They'd be manufactured in the Western Hemisphere. They'd be manufactured in places that don't use child labor and slave labor. Let me tell you a little story. When I was over there at the Labor Department at ILAB, the International Labor Affairs Bureau, we had a meeting with Customs and Border Protection and Homeland Security to talk about doing this enforcement. Unfortunately, too many people over there at Customs and Border Protection at that time, this is going back to 2017, they view their job as facilitating global supply chains, not enforcing this law. And we said, and one of the fellows at the table from CBP said, well, I mean, what would happen if we stopped importing flowers from Colombia, where we know children are being used to harvest these roses that are sold on Valentine's Day? What about the people selling roses in America? And we said, well, they'd have to buy the roses from California. That's all, instead of buying them from Colombia. But there are good people at iLab, there are good people in the government that absolutely want to enforce this and end slavery in the world. We are now facilitating slavery by providing a market for these slave-made goods.
Curtis, I have a question.
Unfortunately,
Curtis, I have a quick question. Do we have the infrastructure necessary to facilitate bringing back manufacturing immediately? I mean, I know there was a report by the America's Manufacturing Association that said that the Midwest's infrastructure was so poor that they could not probably bring back more than 400,000 manufacturing. They could not bring back manufacturing jobs. If they did have an infrastructure plan, it would bring back 400,000. But most manufacturing jobs can come back to major regions of this country, the areas that have been devastated by free trade for the last 30 years. Their infrastructure is too poor. If we enforce that law from 1930, what are the chances, A, that those manufacturing jobs could be sustained in America, and B, that they could, or would they just go to India or something, or B, would they, if they came back, they would just go to either Nevada or Texas, and the people who've been devastated by free trade would just continue to be devastated by free trade?
Or the people who've been devastated by free trade in Western Pennsylvania and Michigan would move to Nevada. I mean, that's the way it used to work. People would sell their house and move, but when there's no jobs, there's no buyers for your house, so you can't sell your job, you're stuck there. Look, there's always an excuse for why we can't do this, why we can't do this. Excuses are not very pleasant things. You have to have the will to do it. Is it all going to happen overnight? No. And maybe some of these jobs actually, like in the garment sector, for example, we know that all the cotton grown in Kazakhstan is harvested with forced labor. It could all be eliminated overnight. That cotton is sold in Bangladesh, where it's sewn into garments. If we were to enforce this law, and it would be very easy because there are genetic markers in that cotton, so we can tell immediately by looking at a garment, taking a sample, if that contains Kazakh cotton. Those jobs would probably, the cut and sew work would probably go to Central America or Mexico or Colombia, not necessarily to the garment district in New York or downtown LA. But even so, they would be using cotton grown in the United States, thread that was woven into textiles in the Carolinas, rather than slave cotton grown in Kazakhstan, woven in China, and then sewn in Bangladesh. All of those jobs, all of those people in Honduras that are now cutting and sewing garments under this new regime might not be rushing our border. So there's a lot of possibilities here. We just have to have the will to do it. And if you say or someone says, the infrastructure is not there for these jobs, look, we have better infrastructure than most of the world, and that's another reason to rebuild our infrastructure, as President Trump has talked about.
Hey, Curtis, it's Jack Maxey talking. I totally agree with you with this idea that if it's not going to be made here, at least it might be made in Honduras or somewhere else. This just goes right to the heart of something that one of our guests, Dave Ramaswamy, has talked about, this idea of an alliance of liberty, the nations on planet Earth where basic human rights are built into the structure. And it seems to me that some of our policies should be designed around promoting trade with those countries versus China. In fact, I spent several hours last night with some people in Brazil who are terrified about what's going on down there with the CCP coming in, buying up assets, buying up most of their soybean production, and they're really fearful for their country. And I think, I think this is a great step, but I really think that we need to push the idea of declaring the Chinese Communist Party a criminal organization. I mean, we have to end this. They don't represent the Chinese people. We are doing trade deals with a criminal organization that is not legitimate. And I think if we do that, if we start speaking about them as a criminal organization, let's stop mincing our words, the world has to react because we can point out their crimes. Absolutely. We can point out what they've done to the Uyghurs. We know that they have DNA databases so that they can match organs with a rich guy from the Middle East. It's terrifying.
Curtis, we have about 90 seconds left. Your final word to you.
Well, what Jack talked about, this alliance of liberty, this is exactly what we did during the Cold War. We didn't trade with the Soviet Union. We tried to cut off trade with the Soviet Union. We stopped Western Europe from building a pipeline to get gas from Russia. So that's exactly what we have to do. If we can't bring the supply chains back to the United States, let's trade with people who share our values. That's why it's so important also to get out of the World Trade Organization and so we can start giving preference to people that share our values and cut off criminal organizations, of which the Chinese Communist Party is public enemy number one. There is no reason we should be trading with the enemy. It's that simple.
Well, Curtis Ellis, the policy director for America First Policies, is prolific, has another great op-ed over at American Greatness as well. The URL for that is amgreatness, amgreatness.com. The article entitled, "We Need the Voice of America," and this goes to the Joe Biden claim that was made yesterday that if he is elected president, he will get rid of the newly appointed head of Voice of America, the government-funded international broadcast service from the United States to the rest of the world, Michael Pack, because, as Curtis writes, Michael Pack is as an ally of Steve Bannon. Curtis, we're so grateful to have you on the show, always. Thank you very much. We'll be back in the War Room in just a moment. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Ryan Girdusky, Raheem Kassam, Jack Posobiec, and next, Andy Surabian.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back to the War Room. It's Friday, June the 26th, the year of our Lord 2020. You can probably tell that Steve Bannon is not here, and when the Master of Ceremonies is absent, we like to have the best and brightest in studio with us to help with that heavy lift. But we failed to get them on, so we have Ryan Girdusky, Jack Posobiec, and we're joined now also by Republican strategist and advisor to Donald Trump Jr., Andy Surabian, joining us in just a second. I just want to real quickly see if we can throw on the screen this headline in Sky News. Now, at the beginning of the show, we started with breaking news. Breaking news out of the United Kingdom, breaking news out of Glasgow city centre, where a knifeman is supposed to have stabbed up to 20 people and up to 3 people are dead. We're still getting breaking news of that, but I've been monitoring the Sky News headlines on this. The Sky News headline on this started as 3 dead after stabbing attack. It then changed to multiple people stabbed. It has now changed to Glasgow, man shot dead by police after stabbing attack in city centre. Man shot dead by police. You mean a clearly mentally deranged, could be even a terrorist incident, man shot by police. This is like, crowd gets in the way of car, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely. And by the way, I know this is an American audience, and Sky News maybe won't be apparent to you, but it is the major news source in the United Kingdom outside of the BBC, outside of the British Broadcasting Service. This is what we're dealing with here. I want to pivot now to Andy Surabian. Andy wrote an extraordinary op-ed yesterday on the National Pulse. You can find it at thenationalpulse.com. Big Tech's war on speech is a war on you, and you're losing. Andy, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Thanks for having me today, guys.
Hey, Andy, this is an issue that's very, very close to my heart, especially because I am currently still suspended from Twitter. And you want to talk about dovetailing moments, because what did I do last week when there was another stabbing attack in the United Kingdom? Is I tweeted a video out of the events as they were taking place on the ground, because people need to know the news, because they can't trust Sky News when you tell them man shot dead by police. And so, Andy, you wrote this thing for us yesterday. Talk us through, because there are so many people out there right now who say, we get it, we've heard about it so much from the Republicans. What are people actually doing about this, Andy?
So first off, Raheem, you made the cardinal sin of telling the truth about a group of people that the media does not want people to know the truth about. That was your issue. That's why you're suspended from Twitter right now. And this is something that we've been seeing, and we've been seeing it accelerate as we get closer to the election. I say this all the time. This is election interference. That's the grand irony of everything that's going on with big tech. All of their recent censorship moves, they claim it, part of the reason they're doing it is to make sure there's not misinformation spreading on social media. Oh, because, a couple random guys connected to Russia spent $30,000 on Facebook ads in 2016. They claim that's the reason they're doing this. The grand irony is by removing voices like yours, removing other pro-Trump, conservative, right-leaning voices is the definition of election interference. And the problem with these companies, and you guys know that I'm a libertarian-leaning conservative, but I have a message to all my friends on the right, conservative, libertarian, everyone in between. These people are out to get you. They're out to stamp your voices out. And you can say and talk all you want about how, they have a right to censor who they want to censor. Okay, but what they don't have the right to do is to treat their users differently based upon their political beliefs. If there are standards on Twitter, if there are standards on Facebook, if there are standards on YouTube, they need to be applied equally throughout the entire user base. And what we have seen, and as I highlight in the op-ed, is, Facebook in particular, but all of them, none of them do that. There is a heavy hand of censorship for people who lean right, and there's very little censorship for people who lean left. And that's the problem, and that's why I really hope for Facebook and Google in particular that they face some very serious questions from the DOJ.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Andy, I have a quick question for you. So, Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri, who's a very establishment Republican, very much a centrist Republican, he came out for repealing Section 230. Do you and he's in House leadership as far as the Republican side goes. Do you think the ground is moving, the middle is moving on this issue in a sizable way when we're seeing more establishment politicians come out for something that they would have never signed up for 5 years ago?
Well, I think that's right, Ryan. I think they are coming around. And listen, I'm happy to see it. Even if it's happening a little later than we would like to have seen, Rye, I do think it's a good thing when you start seeing people waking up. I mean, listen, about 2 years ago, I noticed Kevin McCarthy started talking about text censorship. The fact that he's talking about it is a net positive. But at some point, there needs to be some sort of action. That action might not be legislative action necessarily, but I do think the DOJ should look very hard, particularly, less so into Twitter, particularly into Facebook and into Google. And there should be a conversation had about, for example, for Google, the bias in their search engine, right? There should be a conversation had about the control both these companies have over the internet. When you have Facebook that owns Instagram and WhatsApp, you have Google that itself is the biggest website in the world, owns the second biggest website in the world, YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty.
It reminds me back in 2016 during the election when you would type in Google like Hillary Clinton and said, 70-something years old, is a woman, whatever, and you go into Bing and be like, is delusional, is, evil, is a murderer. Like, it was like a completely different search engine responses that Google would have.
Andy, we've only got about 30 seconds left. Just tell the audience where they can find more from you. Are you on Parler, for instance? I know a lot of people moving across from Twitter to Parler recently.
Yeah. So I have my Twitter. I just started a Parler yesterday. You can find me at the same username, @Surabies, SURABEES. So I'll be there for as long as Twitter will have me, I suppose.
We will make sure to kick up a stink in your favor if they ever come after you. The same way you do for me, and I'm very grateful for the support. Andy Surabian, Republican strategist, great friend of the show, advisor to Donald Trump Jr. Also, we'll keep you guys abreast as much as we can of the developments in this big tech bias situation. We're all over it, believe me. It's an issue very close to my heart. Will be back with the second hour War and Pandemic. Jack Posobiec, Ryan Girdusky, and the team after this break.